So for the first Hammer horror film I've ever seen, I think, this was pretty damn impressive. Horror of Dracula is a Hammer horror film that was made in 1958, starring the infamous Christopher Lee as Dracula himself, made extremely famous by the horror series, and especially this first one of the first Hammer horror films that was made. The screen is going to keep going on behind me, so it won't stay on the title screen, and I'll just continue with the film, so you get to see some of the film in the background. But yeah, Christopher Lee was made famous for these films. The Hammer horror series is basically the Universal Monsters series of Britain. So you got your Draculas and your Frankensteins, and you got other horror titles in there with other monsters and stuff like that. But basically, the Hammer horror is what the Universal Monster Studio is in the United States, in Britain. So there's a slew of Dracula films, and this is going to be my first review, starting with the first Dracula film, Horror of Dracula, released in 1958, produced by Anthony Hinz, Hammer Films, obviously, and yeah, based on a novel by Bram Stoker, of course. These are well-known names. These are big names. Especially for the studio. I loved it. I really did. The atmosphere, right from the beginning of the film, is extremely gothic and extremely fitting. It masters it. I really love the black and white feel of the Universal Classic Monsters films. And usually I like to watch the classic horrors in black and white, you know, the traditional 1940s stuff. But for the later entries that came out of Britain, they're great. I mean, with the smoke effects and the steam effect and all the graveyard esque and the Castle Dracula. I mean, it just looks absolutely incredible. They went for broke with the set pieces on this one. So it starts with the kind of a similar start to the Universal Classic Dracula from 1930 something. I forget exactly what year it was. The one with Bela Lugosi, and you get Jonathan Harker. By the way, I have not read the novel. I know the novel is basically all journal entries, which this film has Jonathan Harker, yes, writing journals pretty much through the entire first act. So I assume it really pays tribute to the novel. Do I have my remote here? Yeah, whatever. I'll just let the film play in the background, whatever. I don't want any copyrights or anything. Christopher Lee looks incredible as Dracula. I mean, he's just as fitting in the role as Bela Lugosi was. For his own portrayal of it, amazing. Jonathan Harker is going to investigate Dracula and basically not stalk him, but infiltrate his castle and stuff like that. I think that, I don't know how much tribute that pays to the book, because he does find this woman imprisoned by Dracula and who is a vampire. He ends up killing the woman further on, but he already knows that Dracula is Dracula. And I think in some interpretations, either Jonathan Harker or Van Helsing went in not knowing that Dracula was a vampire whatsoever. So yeah, he goes in. He knows he's a vampire already. He has his stakes already and stuff like that. He kills this. He gives this woman a mercy kill. Basically, you don't even really get her name. And once she's got the stake in her, she automatically turns into an old lady, which I guess means that she's been a vampire for centuries probably, or has been turned a long time ago and has been captive, obviously, by Dracula. Um, and then uh, another thing about this film, it's super strong on the traditional vampire lore, like the garlic, the crucifixes, the lighting, the light, sunlight. It's all over this film. This film is soaked in vampire lore, which you don't even get a lot in the 30s Dracula with Bela Lugosi. You get this film littered with it, with every vampire lore you can imagine. It is brilliant. It is so classic. It is so well done. I had a super good time with it. Um, so you get introduced to Van Helsing, and Van Helsing is also in search of the castle, and he ends up finding the castle. He finds Jonathan Harley already transformed into a vampire, and you're introduced to these two new characters named Lucy and Arthur, and Jonathan Harker. I keep wanting to say Harper. Jonathan Harker was going to marry the brother of Arthur, who Van Helsing was basically a doctor for. Now, this part didn't make a lot of sense to me because they had like a general doctor that was taking care of Lucy because Lucy is sick for reasons unknown. We find out it's because she's been bitten by a vampire, but she's been sick for a while, and because Van Helsing and Arthur were so close, right, like as soon as they're introduced, you would think that he's the main doctor, not a second opinion, because that's what they call it. They call it a second opinion, or they wanted to get a second opinion from Van Helsing. What do you mean a second opinion? He's a master of this allure, this vampire allure. He should have known that Lucy was bitten right from the beginning, but it takes him days to figure it out. It just that stretched my believability a little bit, but it still works. Whatever. Um, it's a vampire movie. Um, but yeah, so Lucy is sick. She was gonna marry this guy Jonathan Harker, who ended up being bitten and killed, and Van Helsing doesn't want to tell Arthur or Lucy or his wife Arthur's wife Mina, because he doesn't want to torment them. But later on, he ends up telling them anyway. Um, so where else do we get? Yeah, Lucy ends up being bit as well. That's why she's sick or ill, and Count Dracula is basically after her to replace the woman that Jonathan killed and stabbed through the with a stake, because that relieves their soul. So it doesn't, when you stab a vampire through the with a stake through the heart, it unleashes their soul, so they're not undead for eternity, kind of thing. So it's kind of like a mercy kill in that sense. So he did that to the woman. So now Dracula wants revenge by going after Lucy, and he does. But Lucy also ends up dying in the middle of the movie, basically. A lot of deaths in this movie. From characters that you're introduced to like early on and you think are gonna build to something, but then they just end up dying. So there's a lot of characters introduced, new ones over and over. But yeah, then like it ends up in a chase after Dracula, basically, with Van Helsing as the second opinion doctor and Arthur, because after Lucy dies, Dracula's next target is Mina, Arthur's wife. So he ends up luring Mina somehow. I think somehow he ends up luring her because he sends a boy to her house to deliver him a message and come to this address, and then she does, and then Dracula's there and he bites Mina, and she, you know, ends up being a vampire. And there's a scene where Arthur gives Mina a crucifix to hold in her hand, and it burns her hand. More of the vampire lore. So then he figures out that she's the next target of Dracula, and all he wants to do then is work with Van Helsing to destroy Dracula once and for all. The British dialogue is amazing in this film. The dialogue in general, it's so witty and very Brit. I love it. There's scenes where Lucy, as a vampire, she meets with her niece in public, and her niece is confused because, Lucy's supposed to be dead, but now she's undead as a vampire, so it's very confusing with the niece, and that gets into a nice plot twist. I like that a lot. So yeah, I like those scenes. Yeah, basically, the final scene is with a battle between Van Helsing and Dracula, and I think Dracula's pretty much an idiot for dying in the way he did, because again, with the lore, Van Helsing sees the window and it's all covered in blinds, and then they're ready to attack each other, and then he just dives to the window and rips the blinds apart, and then Dracula, like, in the light, he's just like burning like crazy. And then another huge lure to, like, classic vampire shit. It just takes two I don't even know what they were, but two rods of some sort, and he puts them like this, and he's just going like that, and Count Dracula's just like, ah, and he starts turning to ash. It's great. Great practical effects on that. Amazing practical effects. With the way he starts turning into ash. It's not really CGI. It's pretty much all practical, and I love that too. Always a treat. Always a treat. It's mentioned that Dracula can transform into, like, bats, but it's never shown. There's no bats in this film. There is an owl, which might be him, but I don't know. But there's no bats in this film. He doesn't transform into a bat, and it's just mentioned, but he doesn't ever do it. So that's interesting, and that's new. And yeah, outside of the Dracula death and him turning into ashes with the sunlight and the made crucifix, it's awesome. And then the curse is lifted from Mina as soon as Dracula dusts off into ash and dust, and then yeah, the curse is lifted from Mina. The curse is lifted from, well, not the other two ladies, because they had already been let go. But yeah, and then that's how it goes. And there's a lot of films to review for the Hammer Horror series, so this might take me a while. I don't know how long it's going to take me, because I don't know how, like, if I'm going to do them daily or weekly or whatever. I don't even own them all. So I have to get them or find them somehow. But yeah, I intend to do the whole thing. I mean, I certainly want to do all the Draculas, probably all the Frankensteins, and any other Hammer I can get my hands on. So until next time, that was my first Hammer Horror review, and hope you enjoyed. So cheers.